Cat keeps crying after owner dies. Then the vet reads his collar and says, "Oh my God. A grieving feline. A revealing secret. What can a cat possibly hide?" Brace yourself for a story that will captivate you from start to finish. Dr. Emily Parker's small veterinary clinic in Millfield, Ohio, had never seen anything quite so odd. A gray cat with amber eyes, thin and visibly distressed, meowed so mournfully it sounded almost human. Dr. Parker, with 15 years under her belt, watched in astonishment as the animal, brought in by social services, had refused to eat for nearly a week. The feline had been found beside the body of its elderly owner who had died alone in his apartment, only discovered 3 days later by a concerned neighbor. The cat's crying didn't even stop when Dr. Parker tried soothing him with gentle strokes. Something about those continuous meows conveyed more than just hunger or discomfort. There was a deep, almost human pain. "I've never seen anything like this in all my years," Emily commented to her assistant Jenna, who unsuccessfully tried offering some premium cat food to the animal. The cat, named Merlin according to information left at the deceased's apartment, turned away from any food as if he had taken a vow of fasting and mourning for his lost owner. The local animal shelter staff had left Merlin at the clinic as a last resort, fearing he might not survive much longer if he continued refusing to eat. "He has a collar with some inscriptions, but it's so dirty we couldn't make it out," explained Mark, the shelter's driver, handing over the cat's few belongings. A faded blue bowl with Merlin handwritten on it, and a small blanket carrying the scent of his former home. "The landlord already rented out the apartment to someone else and threw most of the things away," added the man sadly. Dr. Parker decided to keep Merlin under observation, setting up a camera to monitor him throughout the night. What she witnessed in the footage broke her already hardened heart. The cat sat upright for hours, staring at the door as if expecting someone to walk in, occasionally letting out long, sad meows that echoed through the clinic's empty corridors. In the dead of night, when all was silent, the meows turned into guttural sounds so similar to human crying that the night shift receptionist checked to see if there wasn't a lost child on the premises. The next morning, Emily arrived determined to thoroughly examine the animal. She sedated Merlin lightly, just enough to check him without causing more stress. As she ran her hands through the cat's matted fur, she noticed that the collar wasn't just dirty, but had a small metallic compartment almost imperceptible. With careful fingers, she opened the tiny container embedded in the worn leather, finding a piece of paper folded several times, protected from moisture by a thin plastic layer. As she unfolded the paper and read its contents, her hands began to tremble. "Oh my God!" she exclaimed, calling her assistant immediately. The handwritten words, in the shaky script of an elderly person, revealed a secret that explained the extraordinary behavior of the feline. "Whoever finds this note, please take care of my Merlin. He is not an ordinary cat. He has been trained as an emotional support and therapy animal. He knows when I am about to have a heart attack and has been trained to call for help. Please contact my daughter at the number below. She doesn't know I am sick. We haven't spoken for 12 years due to a silly argument, but Merlin is the last link between us." An unexpected reunion. The phone rang 4 times before a hesitant female voice answered with a, "Hello?" Emily took a deep breath before explaining the situation, choosing her words carefully. "My name is Emily Parker. I'm a veterinarian in Millfield. I'm calling about Merlin, your father's cat." There was silence on the other end of the line, followed by a choppy sigh. "Merlin is still alive? My father?" The incomplete question hung in the air, laden with belated hope and anticipatory regret. "I'm sorry to inform you that your father passed away about 10 days ago," Emily replied gently. "Merlin was found beside him and is under my care, but he refuses to eat. We found a note on his collar, written by your father." Another long silence, broken only by a muffled sob. We hadn't spoken in so long. He tried to call me last month, but I didn't answer. I thought we'd have time," confessed the woman, her voice choked with emotion and remorse. Sarah explained that she lived in Pittsburgh, about 3 hours away, but would take the first bus to Millfield. "Please tell Merlin I'm coming for him. He knows me. We were inseparable before I left." Emily promised to do her best to keep the cat comfortable until Sarah's arrival, feeling emotionally invested in this tale of broken bonds and late regrets. After hanging up, she returned to the room where Merlin was and, for the first time, noticed a change in the animal's demeanor. His ears had moved toward the door, as if he were more alert. The reunion was something Emily knew she would remember forever. As she entered the kennel area, Merlin immediately lifted his head, his pupils dilating as he fixed his gaze on Sarah. For a moment, no one moved. Not the cat, not the woman, nor the veterinarian watching the scene, holding her breath. Then, as if an invisible dam had broken, Merlin let out a meow different from all the previous ones. Not of pain or lament, but of recognition. Sarah fell to her knees in front of the kennel door, which Emily quickly opened, and the cat leaped into the woman's arms. Secrets revealed. As Sarah filled out the paperwork to release Merlin, Emily noticed that the cat, now sitting in the woman's lap, finally accepted small pieces of food offered by the assistant. It was as if Sarah's return had granted the animal permission to continue living. He's dehydrated and thinner than he should be, but physically there are no other issues, Emily explained, handing over a list of recommendations. His trauma is emotional. Support animals develop extraordinarily strong bonds with their handlers. Sarah nodded, gently stroking Merlin's head. I was the one who trained him, you know? Before everything fell apart between me and my dad. Her voice was low, as if sharing a precious secret. I was an occupational therapist, specializing in animal-assisted therapy. Merlin was my graduation project. Emily leaned forward slightly, surprised by the revelation that added new layers to the already moving story. So you're an expert on the subject. That explains his exceptional behavior. My father had his first heart attack when I was 24, continued Sarah, her eyes fixed on some distant point in the past. The doctors recommended he not live alone. I couldn't just abandon my life to move back, so I had the idea to train Merlin, who was just a kitten at the time. Her fingers traced circular motions on the gray cat's fur, which purred softly, apparently also lost in memories. I taught him to recognize subtle changes in breathing, posture, even body odor that precede a heart attack. Emily listened fascinated as Sarah described the rigorous training that had transformed a simple domestic cat into a sophisticated four-legged cardiac monitor. We installed a special communication system. Merlin was trained to press an emergency button if he detected the signs. The button triggered both a sound alarm in the neighbor's apartment and an automatic call to emergency services. Her eyes filled with tears again. It worked perfectly for years. He saved my father at least 3 times before we had a fight. A second chance. 2 days later, Sarah called Emily with an unexpected request. Could you accompany me to my father's apartment? The landlord agreed to let me enter one last time before removing everything that remained. There was a vulnerability in her voice that the veterinarian couldn't refuse. Thus, on a cloudy winter Sunday, Emily found herself in front of an old building in downtown Millfield, waiting for Sarah, who arrived punctually with Merlin safely in a carrier. Thank you for coming, said Sarah, her face showing as much gratitude as apprehension. The small 4th-floor apartment exuded that particular melancholy of spaces recently emptied of life. Most of the furniture was still there, covered in a thin layer of dust. Merlin, once released from the carrier, began to cautiously explore the environment, sniffing every corner as if mapping changes in the familiar territory. Sarah stood at the entrance for a few moments, taking deep breaths as if trying to absorb what was left of her father's presence in the air. He lived here for almost 30 years, she remarked, finally advancing to the small living room. In a room transformed into an office, they found shelves full of books, many on cardiology and health, but also an entire section dedicated to animal-assisted therapy, the books Sarah had left behind. On one of the higher shelves, a carved wooden box caught their attention. I've never seen this before, commented Sarah, stretching to reach it. The box was locked, but a small key was taped to the bottom. Inside, they found a meticulously organized collection of letters, all addressed to Sarah, none sent. Oh, Dad, murmured Sarah, opening the first envelope with trembling hands, dated just days after the fight that had separated them. The letter began with an apology. explaining that his concern had been expressed in the worst possible way. Emily discreetly stepped back to give Sarah some privacy, but she could hear the contained sobs as the woman discovered 12 years of unshared thoughts, birthdays remembered in silence, lonely Christmases, and reconciliation wishes that never found the courage to travel the few miles separating father and daughter. New beginnings. 6 months had passed since the day Merlin arrived at the veterinary clinic crying inconsolably. The small apartment in downtown Millfield, once melancholy in its silence, now buzzed with renewed energy. The walls, previously adorned only with old photographs, now also displayed certificates, diplomas, and articles about the Richard Thompson Feline Training Center, specializing in preparing cats to support cardiac patients. In the main room, where Mr. Thompson's favorite armchair once stood, there was now a small training arena with various specialized devices. It was a sunny Thursday in spring when Emily arrived for her weekly visit, bringing with her a carrier containing a spotted kitten just 4 months old. "This is Lola," she introduced to Sarah, who was waiting at the door with Merlin watching curiously the new arrival. The Castro family adopted her specifically for the program. Mr. Castro had a mild heart attack last month, and his cardiologist recommended our project. Sarah smiled, squatting down to open the carrier and allowing the kitten to explore the new environment under Merlin's watchful eye. Now not just a recovered patient, but the senior instructor of the program. Every week, the center welcomed new cats and families, offering hope and a second chance at both ends of the leash. Sarah had transformed her grief into purpose, and Merlin had found a new mission, teaching other cats to do what he had done so well: save lives and keep hearts connected, even across the greatest distances. As Emily watched Merlin supervising the new kitten with infinite patience, always attentive when Lola played with the equipment instead of learning to use the emergency button, she understood the true lesson of these past few months. It wasn't just about a cat trained to save lives, but about how lost time never returns. A simple collar held what proud voices couldn't say for 12 years. And now, each heartbeat saved by their program would be a second chance, one that father and daughter never had, but through Merlin, they offered to strangers. The truth was clear and touching. Broken hearts can heal other hearts, even after they stop beating. If you also believe in the power of love and loyalty of animals, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced or heard of an emotional tale like Merlin's? Share your story in the comments, we'd love to read it.